Okay, so welcome back to Interview the Interesting. In this episode, I have Bronwen with me, if you want to introduce yourself.
My name's Bronwen. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the head of training and enterprise at Off the Record.
Perfect. Okay, right. So today we're going to talk about all things resilience because Bronwen is expert.
That's my jam.
Yeah, she's an expert in this field. So, right, to kick it off, the first question is, what is resilience and how can we define it?
This is something that's really interesting in all the academic research around resilience. They've never been able to agree on a single definition. So the first thing I would say is there is not an agreed definition of what resilience is.
Right.
I like to think about it as being our ability to go through tough times and to recover and grow after it. So it's got that idea of kind of bouncing back and perseverance, but it's also about how we are after we've gone through something difficult. So it's not just about that moment, and it's not just about surviving, it's actually going on to thrive as well.
Yeah, bouncing forward, isn't it? Not just bouncing back.
People use that expression, yeah.
Okay, right. So second question, what are some of the ways that we can practically take responsibility of our resilience, or how can we improve and maintain it?
I think one of the biggest things that we can do for ourselves is to be our own advocate. So what that means is kind of understanding what our strengths are and what we're good at and what actually also makes us feel good. So, the things that fill us up and that kind of replenish us and make us feel that, life is worthwhile.
Yeah.
Like understanding all of those different things. And also the other thing about resilience is knowing when something's too much and actually we need to get kind of some help from external sources. So that could be, obviously, like there's the really obvious one with mental health, kind of like, go to counselling or reaching out to OTR or whatever. Yeah. But actually, I'm also talking about all sorts of help. So, I've been having to do an awful lot of DIY in my house that I've moved into. And there's some jobs that I'm completely happy to do and make me feel quite confident. And I can feel all like, Sigourney Weaver-like after I complete them with my drill.
Ripley.
But there are some jobs that just scare me and I need to get someone else to help me with it or to show me how to do it. And that is actually a sign of resilience, like being able to do that rather than kind of electrocuting myself by attempting something that I'm not qualified to do, I guess so. It's something about like knowing yourself really well, knowing your strengths, knowing what you've got to offer the world, what you want to get from the world, and then also like what you do when things aren't working.
Yeah, nice. I guess it's sort of recognizing and reflecting on what you're good at and then maybe what you need help with as well, isn't it? Sort of.
Yeah, I mean, like a really big thing in resilience is about being realistic.
Yeah.
So kind of being positive, it's great, and we do kind of need to keep that kind of that optimism, but it's also about being realistic about the situation that we're in, and how much we can actually change and how much we have to kind of, potentially put up with, how much we have to kind of work around. So like the pandemic, I mean, we can't do anything about lockdown.
No.
Like when we're looking at a situation realistically, there's nothing we can do about that barrier.
No.
But there is stuff that is within our power to do within that. And it's kind of looking at that and making the most of those opportunities.
Nice. Yeah. I totally agree with everything you just said.
Oh, good.
That's handy.
I'm very convincing.
Yeah, you are. So why is resilience so important for life or in life?
So some of the theories around resilience. So one of the theories around one of the researchers that's looked at resilience is this woman called Karen Rivich, and she talks about, and actually lots of people sort of mention it, is this idea of self-efficacy, which any psychology students would probably come across that term. But it's basically that thing of like being able to predict that we're going to be able to do difficult things in the future. So, knowing that something's going to happen or a situation is coming up and we'll be able to get through it, we'll be able to deal with it.
Okay.
And you only get that You only get that from going through difficult experiences and getting through them.
Yeah.
So actually, resilience is a constant evolving practice in our lives.
Yeah.
And depending on what we've been through in our lives, you know, where we've come from, what inequalities we might have faced, you know, our kind of the way the world sees us, you know, there might be much bigger challenges to our resilience than there are for other people who have different experiences and, you know, levels of privilege or whatever. But that kind of building it over time and using it, it seems to be the most important factor.
Right. Okay. So you can't so it's not necessarily a case of you've once you've done all the work, you've become resilient and that's it. It's not like
you don't ascend. I'm a resilient human being, and then that's it. And then you don't have to do it. I mean, I think it's, you know, it's a continual process. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also it's a process that's really important that we've got a bit of self-compassion, because there are going to be some points in our life where it's more difficult than others.
Yeah.
You know, to use that resilience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just watched the TED Talks with a woman called Lucy Horn. She's like an expert in resilience from New Zealand, and she was saying about how resilient people, this will lead on to the next question, resilient people often they take time to try and recognize and reflect on what is good and bad for them. So like doing things that are good for them, and then sort of reflecting and taking a minute and being like, okay, is this going to be good for me? Is this way of acting, is this way of thinking, is this way of behaving conducive to like a good way of life? And so it's I feel like the main message of that is that reflection and self-reflection is really important, isn't it, in resilience and your journey through.
Well, it's going back to that realism. It's like, you know, are we actually looking at our lives in a realistic way? Are we being faithful to that? Yeah. And exactly. I mean, I talk a lot about boundaries and healthy boundaries, because actually we're going to put our resilience massively to the test if we don't respect our own boundaries. Right. So actually, one of the ways that we are resilient is by making sure that we know what those boundaries are and we've got them in place, which is kind of what Lucy Horn's sort of saying. It's like, this isn't going to, you know, I know, okay, this is a really stupid example. I don't like WhatsApp groups. Like, no. There's one that I agree to be on because it's my absolute 4 best mates, and it's fine.
That's enough.
Yeah, but every single other one that I've ever been invited on, I'm like, really sorry, I don't do WhatsApp groups, and just take myself off. And like, obviously some people probably think that's really weird, but I find them annoying. I get too many notifications. I then get annoyed with people in the groups when actually they're my friends, and you know, like, and actually I don't need to be on them because I still get told about the things that are happening.
Exactly.
And, I'm not missing out. So that's an example of a very simple kind of boundary.
That's just a classic example of how good you are at giving examples, Bronwen, as well.
Nah.
So that leads me nicely on to the next question then. Is so like, what are some of the characteristics that are found in resilient people, or what's common among resilient people?
So you know, being emotionally literate, so understanding what emotions they're feeling and what they're going through, and also having some tools to deal with that. So you know, if when resilient people experience anger, they might have a way of kind of like channeling that or dealing with it, or kind of taking time out, or whatever it is, but they know that they're feeling it, and then they've got something that they can do with that emotion. So it's not about being a robot and not feeling anything. And I think that's an important point, because you know, resilient people feel sad. That doesn't mean that you're not resilient because you have a few days crying in bed. That can be part of the process, right? And then so impulse control comes into it, you know, like, and that obviously makes sense, because if we don't have any tools for dealing with stuff like anger, then obviously we're going to lose it in appropriate ways or in different contexts. Self-efficacy, which I've already mentioned. The realism, the kind of realistic way of looking at the world, and that kind of fits in with that whole idea of like empathy and being able to think in a flexible way. So resilient people are often very good at looking at something from lots of different perspectives and angles.
Yeah.
Which can put their own situation into context.
Yeah.
And also offer them ideas of like what solutions and what they can do, and what they can kind of change potentially as well. And then obviously reaching out and knowing when they need to stop. So it's not always about persevering no matter what. Sometimes it's about going, this is not worth it. I'm going to stop this and do something else.
It's not good for me anymore. Yeah.
No, exactly. And then my favourite one is a sense of humour.
Yeah, that's an unforgotten one, isn't it?
I think it's I think it's a really, really, really useful one, actually. And I think it's really interesting culturally as well, because our sense of humour is different in different cultures. I grew up not in the UK, so
no.
I'm fascinated by what different cultures find funny, and I think it must be something to do with the history of that country and the culture and loads of other aspects of like what we've had to laugh at.
Yeah, we're very good at like laughing at ourselves, aren't we, in England, and sort of that self-deprecating humor where like the comic person in any sort of sitcom will always be like really like sort of they won't be very self-aware, and they'll just be like, we'll be laughing at them, whereas in like America they'll be like a hero, and they'll be like the main guy, they'll be like the macho guy, and it will be like he's really funny because he's just a really funny person. But
because he's entertaining and charming, and it's interesting. I mean, I'm sure there must be an academic or whole host of academic researchers that probably look at humor in different anthropological contexts.
Yeah, no, I want to explore that because that's interesting. It's because humor is a funny one, isn't it? Because I guess it's sort of resilient people try to see the funny side of things, don't they? So when they like look at a situation, they try to focus on the funny side of it, or in like a wider context, that's more say when something's happening in your life, you try and tune into the positive rather than tune into the negative. Also be aware of the negative, but then sort of focus on the positive to then bring you back down to ground and being like, okay, I've got good things in my life. I need to focus on those things and work on those things.
And it's a way of connecting, isn't it? So like, I'm I don't go around my house trying to be funny on my own.
No.
Like I have to have someone in front of me to be able to kind of have that humor. So obviously there's like inherent in the idea of like humor is having a connection with another human being.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it is something about the realism as well. Like, and it's kind of like being able to recognize the reality of a situation, but it may be in a safe way. So you can go, this is a bit crap, isn't it? But actually it is a bit crap. But you're able to kind of put that out there to your friend or a group, and then there can be that recognition that yes, this situation is not great. Yeah. But we're not going to be swamped by it. We're actually going to laugh about it, and we're going to work out what we're going to do. Yeah,
that's it. Because there's that thing often, isn't there? Like people will be like, if something sort of not that good happens to you, they'll be like, oh, don't worry. Like we'll look back at this day and we'll laugh at it. We'll laugh at what we did and stuff. And it's like, yeah, maybe that is sort of true, but I guess it's that awareness in the time that's needed as well, isn't it? To try and put perspective in the then and now. Yeah.
Well, and like lots of really high stress jobs are known for having quite dark humor attached to them. Like medics and all sorts. I mean, like and that can slip over into being unhealthy. There's a definite balance, but
definitely.
I think humor is really interesting. And it was like when I used to run Res Lab, it was always my aim to try and get at least one laugh at some point. In the session, because
it makes it so much better, doesn't it? When there's a sort of connection of humour, isn't there? Because then you can sort of bounce off one another or whatnot.
And I would always make it about me being a bit of an idiot, basically, because that's it. If you give other people permission to laugh at you or with you, especially if they're feeling really low. Yeah.
Freeze up
it can be a nice and also people finding their humor again, especially when you've gone through a really rubbish time.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, right, so last question. So do you have any book recommendations, films, documentaries, sort of about this area, about resilience, or about the topics we've discussed? Or any resources that you can point anyone to?
This is when you find out that I don't read any books on this.
What about any films or documentaries or like YouTube videos?
Well, I mean, any drama is going to have elements of information about resilience, because any story, any good story, not a rubbish story, any good story, so whether that's a film, a book, comic, graphic novel, podcast, whatever it is, we have to tell stories as humans. That's what we do. We have a narrative. And like, for that to be successful, there normally has to be a moment of like conflict or challenge or drama. And then there's the resolution afterwards. Now, either that's a positive resolution or it's a negative resolution, depending on, what kind of genre you're watching.
Yeah.
But that just in itself, that cycle tells you kind of everything you need to know about that cycle of resilience and reflection and growth.
Yeah.
So I would say any drama at all. I'm not a big like self-help kind of.
Yeah.
I've got quite a short attention span.
Yeah.
And
I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, Fred, I've never watched a TED talk.
Really? Oh wow. See, I'm sort of the opposite. Like I only read my first book 3 years ago. Like,
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah. But I'd sort of absorbed most of my information from like watching YouTube videos on just different people talking about stuff. But yeah, different means of communication, I guess.
Yeah, completely.
Attention. Yeah.
I mean, like I did anthropology at university, and the only lecturer that I remember the content of their, like the really detailed content of what they were trying to teach us, is the lecturer that made us stand up every half an hour and do a dance.
What, really?
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah.
I'm very much the one who learns stuff through doing and through their body, I think. So most of my stuff's kind of learned by being in a room full of people, really, which is why I struggle so much with this situation. Is that's kind of
definitely. You can't.
I'm not really up for sitting and just watching a flat screen for any length of time.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Okay, right. So one final small question: Who is someone that has inspired you in the field of resilience, or just anyone who you sort of think that's the reason why I do the job I do, or that's the reason why I feel like going ahead?
The people that generally really inspire me are the people who are really like open and honest about the whatever journeys that they've kind of gone on. It's a funny thing.
Sorry, it's a bit of a tricky one.
I mean, the main things that are coming up in my head are like a Bjork, Jacinda Ardern,
okay,
and I think Michelle Obama's pretty amazing.
Nice. Strong three.
I mean, I have to admit, I just love Michelle Obama's outfits at the moment. She's just like, you can tell a story through all of those things. Like, it doesn't just have to be, you can chart someone's development and change as a person. If you look at really early old photos of Michelle Obama,
right,
and then you look at that one from the inauguration just now where she looked like a superhero,
okay,
that is a story of a woman who has grown into her power and been incredibly resilient and kept on coming back, and has actually grown stronger through those challenges rather than kind of not.
Well, that's a really good answer to that question. Well done. That's nice. Brought it all back round to resilience and everything. Yeah, perfect. Okay, well, that is the end of this episode. Thank you so much, Bronwen, again. I really appreciate it. And for now, goodbye.